people love to exaggerate when it comes to these snakes. You hear stories about monsters longer than buses, snakes that could wrap around a house. But if you strip away the legends and look at what scientists have actually measured and what people like me and other researchers have really seen, the truth is still incredible. The green anaconda is the heaviest snake species on the planet. It is one of the longest as well, but what really sets it apart is the thickness of the body. A big female can be as long as a small bus and thicker than the thigh of a very strong man. In the wild, most adults are somewhere around 4 to 5 meters, but some individuals reach a little over 6 meters and can weigh close to or even above 100 kilograms. So tonight I want to talk to you about those giants, the real ones, the snakes that have actually been measured, weighed, filmed, and caught. And I want to weave that science together with the moments when people like me and my friends and my heroes in herpetology have come face to face with these animals. You can let your eyes close if you want. Just listen. Let us go downriver together. The first giant that really changed my life was not the biggest anaconda ever recorded, but it was the first time I realized how big they can truly feel when you are in the water with them. We were in Peru, in a place I love that I have come to call the floating forest. This is a flooded jungle where the river swells and climbs up into the trees. You move through it in a small canoe, or you slip into the water yourself and swim between trunks and branches as if you are moving through a dream. The air out there is thick and wet. It smells like leaves and mud and something ancient. You can hear birds calling somewhere above the canopy and insects buzzing in every direction. Under the water, it is silent. We have been searching for snakes all day. That means hours of pushing the boat through floating vegetation, lifting mats of plants with our hands, feeling along submerged logs with bare fingers and toes. Every touch could be a branch or a turtle or nothing at all. And then, late in the afternoon, we found her. It started with a shape that did not look quite right. Just under the surface of the water, the plants were bulging up where something big lay hidden. The pattern was almost perfect. Almost. But there was a slight curve, a smoothness that the plants alone could not explain. My heart rate went up instantly. I have learned to recognize that shape. We eased the boat closer and reached down through the plants. My hand slid over something cool and firm and alive. It was like touching a moving tree root made of living muscle. Anaconda, I said quietly. The next seconds are always chaos mixed with focus. We grabbed for the body with both hands, feeling for the head, trying to get control without hurting the animal. She exploded into motion, the water turning into white foam. That enormous body whipped around, and suddenly there were coils everywhere. Around my arms, my chest, my legs. A big snake like that does not have to be the longest on record to make you feel small. She was heavy in the water, a living rope thicker than any rope you have ever held. Even with the buoyancy of the water helping us, it took several people just to keep her from slipping away. We never let the snake wrap around our chests or necks. That is a rule you do not break, but even when you are careful, you feel the power in every movement. Every time she flexed, it was like trying to hold down a sack full of pure muscle. We finally managed to get her length along the side of the boat. Someone held the head gently but firmly. Someone else held the tail, and we stretched a measuring tape from one end to the other. She was a little over 5 meters. A big female, thick around the middle, easily pushing past 80 kilograms. I remember sitting there afterwards, soaked, breathing hard, my hands shaking from adrenaline, looking at this animal lying quietly now along the boat. Her eyes were calm. Her tongue flicked slowly, tasting the air, probably wondering what kind of strange creatures had interrupted her day. That snake, according to the strict books, was not a world record, but to me, in that moment, she felt like a piece of the world itself. She was the first time I truly understood what people mean when they talk about giant anacondas. Later, when I started reading the work of real anaconda scientists, I realized that what we had seen fit right into the pattern. One of the people I admire most in this field is a biologist named Jesus Rivas. He has spent decades studying green anacondas, mostly in the flooded plains of Venezuela. He and his team have captured, measured, weighed, and released more than 1,000 individual snakes. That is not a legend. That is a database. Out of all those snakes, the largest one he personally measured was a female about 5.21 meters long and close to 97.5 kilograms in weight. She was not 8 meters. She was not 10 meters. She was a real, wild, enormous snake that a scientist actually put a tape measure on. When you hear that, it changes the way you think about all those campfire stories. Because for years, people have talked about 30-foot, even 40-foot anacondas. There have been rewards offered for anyone who can produce a live snake over 9 meters long. There are photographs from old expeditions that show hunters proudly standing next to long bodies stretched out on the ground. Some of those photographs are real snakes, but the measurements that go with them can be tricky. Imagine a huge, heavy, freshly dead anaconda lying in the mud. The body is thick and floppy. If you pull on the head and tail to measure it, you can stretch it. If you follow the curve of the body with a measuring tape instead of measuring along a straight line, you can easily add extra length. If you are excited and covered in sweat and everyone is yelling numbers at the same time, it is very easy to round up. There are famous reports from the 20th century of anacondas measured at 7.5 meters in Colombia, another at around 7 3/10 meters in Guyana, one supposedly almost 8 meters in Trinidad, and even a snake claimed to be 8 and almost 1/2 meters in Brazil. Those numbers might be accurate or they might not. In many cases, no preserved specimen was ever sent to a museum, no clear photographs of the proper scale were taken, no modern scientists were there to verify. So the stories live in this strange space between myth and reality. More recently, some articles have repeated a claim of a green anaconda reaching around 8 8/10 meters and about 227 kilograms, calling it the largest scientifically documented anaconda. But even there, when you read the fine print, you find that many herpetologists treat that number cautiously because the documentation is not as strong as it should be. So if you want the honest, sleep-safe answer, it goes like this. The biggest green anacondas that scientists have carefully measured tend to be somewhere between 5 and 6 and 1/3 meters long. The heaviest individuals are probably in the range of 100 to maybe a bit more than 200 kilograms when they are full of food and water. They are shorter than the longest reticulated pythons, which can reach more than 7 1/2 meters in captivity, but they are much heavier and thicker. Now I want to tell you about another snake, one that I did not personally meet, but that some of my colleagues did. A snake that might be the largest anaconda ever properly filmed and measured in the wild with modern methods. Deep in Ecuador's Amazon, a team of scientists working together with Guarani indigenous guides were surveying a remote river system. They were studying anacondas as part of a broader project, and they had heard rumors from the Guarani about truly massive females living in certain flooded forests. One day, moving through the black water channels, they found her. She was basking partly in the water, partly on a submerged log. From a distance, she looked like a tangle of wet, dark roots. As they got closer, the shape resolved into smooth coils with round, dark spots and olive green scales. They did exactly what we do. They approached carefully, making sure they did not corner her in a way that would cause panic. They grabbed for the neck and body, expecting a big snake. What they got was a giant. It took several people up to their chests in water, arms shaking, to control her. Her body was as thick as a strong man's torso. Her head was broad and heavy. Every time she moved, there was this sense that the water itself was shifting around something more solid than it should be. They measured her, not just by guessing, and not by stretching a dead body on the ground. They used proper tools. They filmed the whole process. The length they got was around 6 3/10 meters. A living, wild anaconda, measured carefully, with the entire encounter documented on modern cameras. In the scientific world, a record like that means something. It is not just a story someone tells in a bar. It is something you can show frame by frame. You can see where the tape begins and where it ends. That snake was part of the same big revelation that came out recently, where genetic work showed that what we used to call the green anaconda is actually two separate species, a southern green anaconda and a northern green anaconda. The snake in Ecuador belong to this newly recognized northern species. Genetically, the northern and southern lineages are more different from each other than humans are from chimpanzees. So when you hear people talking about the largest anaconda ever filmed, what they are often talking about now is that huge northern female around 6 3/10 meters long, sliding through the Amazon with the calm of something that has never had to be afraid of anything in its life. When I imagine that animal, I think of the snakes I have seen in Peru. I think of one encounter in particular that has been burned into my memory. We were on a long trip up a remote river, traveling with a local family who hunt anacondas for food and for safety near their village. They know these waters in a way that you cannot learn from books. They have grown up reading the river like a living map. One morning, mist still hanging over the surface, they pulled the canoe into a narrow side channel. The trees closed in above us, turning the light green and dim. The water was shallow and full of submerged branches. "This is a good place," the grandfather said. "We saw a huge female here last year. We checked every meter of water. Nothing. Hours went by. Sun climbed higher. Sweat soaked through our clothes. It felt like one of those days when the jungle just refuses to show you anything. Then we turned a corner, and there she was. At first I saw nothing more than a smooth, dark shape lying along a log. It looked like wet bark. Then the pattern of spots jumped out at me, and the whole outline of the snake snapped into focus. She was thick, much thicker than any ordinary large female. The log beneath her seemed small, like a toy. The water around her looked like it was holding something that did not quite belong in liquid. We moved in. The moment we touched her, the entire channel exploded. Water surged up around us. The snake slid off the log and vanished under the surface. For a few seconds, there was nothing but bubbles and chaos. Then I felt coils moving past my legs, sliding along my chest. It was like standing in a river made of muscle. The snake looped around a tree root, and for a moment I thought we had lost her. But the family knew what they were doing. They blocked off escape routes with the boat. They grabbed where I would not have thought to grab, and slowly, incredibly, we gained control. When we finally got her head safely restrained and her body stretched alongside the canoe, she just kept going. Head, neck, coils, coils, more coils. 6 people had to line up to support her weight. We measured that snake using a rope. We ran it from the tip of the snout to the tip of the tail, carefully, along a straight line as best we could in that flooded channel. Later, on dry land, we measured the rope itself. It came out to around 25 feet, give or take a little for the slight bends, around 7 1/2 meters. I will be honest with you, in those conditions, with that much excitement, with water everywhere and everyone yelling, there is room for error. But there was no question in my mind that she was significantly larger than the 5-meter snakes we were used to. Was she a true 7 1/2 meters, or a little less? I do not know. We did not kill her and carry her out to stretch on a laboratory floor. We let her go. I can still see her in my mind, disappearing back into the dark water, leaving us in that flooded channel shaking with adrenaline and laughter and a little bit of fear. That is the thing about these giants. The bigger they get, the harder they are to document in the way science wants. The very conditions that allow them to get that big, the remote, swampy, flooded areas far from roads and villages, also make it almost impossible to bring them out for official measurements. So there is this gap. On one side, you have strict science, which says, here are carefully measured wild anacondas just over 6 meters long. Here is a captive one that reached a little over 6 1/4 meters before she died. Here is a dataset with 1,000 snakes and a maximum length around 5 1/5 meters. On the other side, you have people like me, local hunters, indigenous guides, fishermen, who swear they have seen, touched, or briefly controlled snakes that are larger. Sometimes much larger. Some of those stories might be exaggerated, but I can tell you this, once you have held a 5-meter snake, you stop underestimating how much nature can surprise you. I think about this a lot when people ask me about my Eaten Alive experience, the famous special where I allowed a 20-foot anaconda to wrap around me to show the world how powerful these animals are. That snake was not even a record breaker by wild Amazon standards. Around 6 meters in length, a big female, but within the range of what we know is possible. And even at that size, when she coiled around my chest, I felt my ribs flex. I felt the blood drain from my arm. I had to stop before something broke. That was with a known, measured snake, in a controlled setup, with a team watching, with a protective suit. Now imagine being a tapir in the dark, stepping into a shallow pool to drink, with no idea that a snake longer than a car is lying under the plants, waiting. Imagine being a capybara swimming across a channel, feeling something brush against you that you assume is a log, until that log wraps around your body and pulls you under. For those animals, it does not matter if the snake is 5 meters, 6 meters, or 8 meters. It is the largest thing they will ever meet, and it will be the last. Another thing I love about the science of this is how it keeps changing. When I started out, we talked about green anacondas as one species spread across much of tropical South America. Now we know there are at least 2 big green species, northern and southern, plus the yellow, Bolivian, and dark-spotted anacondas, each with its own range, its own habits, its own potential for giants. It makes you realize how much we still do not know. Somewhere, right now, there could be a female anaconda lying at the bottom of a blackwater pool in a part of the Amazon that almost no one ever visits. She could be heavier than any snake ever measured. She could be longer than any tape that has yet been stretched along a living body. And unless she swims into the hands of a team that has both the skill and the desire to measure her properly, we will never know exactly how big she is. But that is all right, because the real magic of these giants is not in the exact number of centimeters. It is in the feeling of being in the water with them. It is in the way the forest changes when you know there might be a huge snake coiled under that mat of plants. It is in the respect you feel every time you slide off the side of the boat and lower yourself into brown water where your feet do not touch the bottom. As you lie there now, maybe with your eyes closed, I want you to picture it. You are in a flooded forest, the water up to your chest. The trunks of trees rise all around you, disappearing into a roof of leaves. Shafts of light filter down through the canopy, turning the surface of the water into patches of green gold. Your hands push gently through floating plants. Your toes bump against smooth branches, sunken logs. Somewhere nearby, a frog calls. Somewhere far above, a bird shrieks. The water in front of you bulges slightly. Just a little. As if something is breathing underneath. You reach down. Your fingers touch smooth, cold scales. They glide under your hand, thick and sure. For a moment, you and the snake exist in the same quiet bubble of time. She is not interested in you as food. You are too awkward and bony and strange. She is simply heading somewhere, following a path she has known since she was born, moving from one deep pool to another, following the scent of prey or the pull of some ancient instinct to breed. You let your hand lift away. You watch as her body moves past, coil after coil, disappearing into the darkness between 2 tree trunks. Maybe you count breaths as she passes. 1 breath, 2, 3, 4, 5. Still more snakes sliding by. You do not know exactly how long she is. You do not have a tape measure. All you have is that feeling in your chest. That sense that you have just shared space with something old and powerful and perfectly at home in a world that you are only visiting. Some scientists will continue to measure and weigh and debate records. They will argue about whether the biggest snake was 6 meters or 8 meters, about whether an old photograph was staged or whether a hunter's rope was really straight. All of that is important. It gives us a clearer picture of what these animals can do, of how large life on this planet can grow. But for you, right now, as you drift closer to sleep, the details can soften. You can just let yourself imagine that somewhere out there, in the endless maze of rivers and forests that make up the Amazon, the giants are still moving. A female anaconda as heavy as 3 grown men is resting in a shaded pool, her body draped over submerged roots like a living bridge. Another, a long, lean hunter, is sliding silently through a side channel, her eyes and nostrils just above the surface, the rest of her hidden, waiting for a careless animal to come and drink. Somewhere, a researcher and a local guide are pushing a small boat through a flooded forest, hearts pounding with anticipation, not knowing that just a few meters away, under a mat of plants, lies the biggest snake they will ever see, and you, safe in your bed, can float there with them for a moment. You can feel the cool touch of the water, the rough skin of the tree trunks, the slow glide of scales past your fingers. You can feel the mix of fear and awe and respect that these giants inspire. Then you can let it all fade, like a snake disappearing under dark water. The forest goes quiet, the river slows, the giants coil themselves into comfortable shapes at the bottoms of their pools, and you drift down with them into the dark, heavy, peaceful sleep of the Amazon night.